greetings. Is anybody here? I'm going to do my things. Looks like I do have a creation. Oops, I put that down there. Better fix that. And there it is. Hello, sunshine, 36,922. And ton of things been happening, I tell you. It's, oh, what am I doing? I gotta look at this to see what I'm doing here. Okay, there I am. I guess I can sit back and scroll through this information. No, I'm not going to scroll through it. It's heavy stuff. It's easy to think, you know, everyone thinks I'm crazy anyway, so might as well. No, I feel obligated to Tiendo, in my opinion, to report these things. And it's almost like I can see so much of what they're saying, and it just keeps on ringing a bell of things that Tiendo would be doing to stimulate things. Like, for instance, let me save this to the other locations first. I haven't done that yet. And that's supposed to be a picture of Three-Eye Atlas. At some point, I don't remember exactly when that picture was taken. And I mean, they probably did things to it, but maybe not. I don't know. I mean, they wanted to, you know, they're being compelled, I think, to just report on what's happening, because it's stranger than science fiction could ever be. And that, to me, is an indication that it's got, well, it's obviously got the juice of the next level, the mind of the next level in it, because Atlas wasn't a figment of our imaginations, and it has defied probably all of their physics in ways. Not defied, but expanded. Not defied. That's not the right way to say it, because the humans that have a handle on their descriptions of all the physics involved in these objects in space and the Earth and everything, they know a lot of things because they've been watching things for a long time, and now they're seeing that everything's being turned upside down, inside out, into knowing how to think about and act on the information they're getting. And they're getting it from multiple sources, from Europeans and the Chinese, and I haven't really heard the Japanese weigh in much. But he says the reason that they haven't put it on the news, like the mainstream news, much, except when it was actually here, when they didn't talk about it hardly at all. It was very well known that NASA was very quiet. And what I was told today, I don't know if it was by Michio Kaku or by Aviel Loeb, was that they don't know what to say. And to me that makes sense. Because they know how hard it is for them to comprehend what's been happening. And they've got their minds in a place all the time. Now, at the same time, a lot of people are, uh, I mean, uh, are attuned to recognizing what's happening as being timely and being something they were expecting, even aside from the religious talk and the projections of the prophecy materials. The speaking, the words describing future events that were written down and copied and copied and copied and copied. And so, I have to always comes to mind, how people are saying it's just a fabrication, and what I've begun to think about that is that even if all the Jesus history was a fabrication, that Atlas is beyond human and beyond space alien. Because all the evidence of 50 years from the space alien races that have been interfacing with humans to varying degrees, physically and mentally, they don't talk about the Earth and the life forms on it from a perspective of having created it. Even though it is being spun that the space aliens are the ones talked about in Genesis 6, and it says that they're children of God. The sons of God, right? In other words, they're offspring of the next level above human, and that they created these giants. So that can be interpreted as the beginning of the civilization, and in a certain context, it was. Except by that depiction, that was the end of the previous one, because Moses is responsible for writing that material, and I don't doubt. Well, I don't know if he wrote it or he dictated it or it was a compounding of things that he was getting and was saying, because other people were involved in that material being written down, and there's evidence of that. Like the way that Numbers and Leviticus are covering some of the same material from a different perspective, and anyway, but it has the handwriting on the wall of a Tiando event, even 4,000 years ago, whenever it was exactly, which seemed to be the start of the description of the human kingdom as a school, and that there are beings that aren't human, managing, taking care of, cultivating, growing. See, that's not a negative. When someone grows a tomato, is that a negative? Even though the tomato is going to lose its life, in service to the humans, or the animals, or the insects, and all the above. So I mean, those voices, that balk at that idea that we're being grown, our vehicles, our bodies are being cultivated. Um, so anyway, I put in my description here uh, that I got on in a reel on Facebook that from the Atlas Observer is the name of the page, I guess, which I've actually not gone to that page if it is a page. They want me to. They keep on telling people to, if you see anything in the heavens that's unusual, report it to them and what city you're in. And anyway, so I haven't done that. I just don't want to be noticed. And it's just better for me to stay under the radar, even if it's completely unnecessary. But anyway, so the Atlas Observer says that Three-Eye Atlas actually stopped moving for 6 minutes in December, and then after that 6 minutes was passed, additional objects appeared, and they made a triangular shape to our viewpoint. They said it was a perfect equilateral triangle, and they were puzzled by the perfection of it because they don't know of any natural occurrence that has that kind of perfection. That's another thing that they, and so. So that happened, according to their report, on December 14th. And then after those two objects appeared, within 11 minutes, formed into the perfect equilateral triangle. Now, the two objects, I don't know what they were thinking about Atlas at the time, but had no thermal heat signature. And that, together with the other things that had been happening with Atlas, that they didn't go through a list of, but they just gave 3 examples of, tells them that this is, from what they hope is a in my own words, an advanced civilization that doesn't want to constrict them to the earth because they're so wild or whatever with all their wars and everything. Which to me is an interesting perspective because it's true. The next level doesn't want humans circulating in areas where they're going to mess up things that the next level has going. If the next level has a planet that has life forms on it that are growing in ways equivalent to the way that humans grow, but they don't have the space alien souls, those once young members of the next level that went against the next level, that doesn't have them, so that they could be growing into making spacecrafts that the next level can use and that they use. They could have cities, they could have everything, but they wouldn't have all the ugliness and hatred and abuses of people because they wouldn't have been contaminated with minds that saw humans as lesser beings to them. The way that the rich and famous end up mirroring. And that's why they can justify, uh, you know, uh, having breeding programs, having organ uh, growing programs. You know, that, like, for instance, I saw a report that said that they were installing animal scalps or something like that, or onto human babies, which is, I mean, off the top of my head, that's bizarre that would be being done. But yet I know that they have more than probably they can use babies from all the late-term abortions. And who knows how they've been growing babies, on the space alien spacecrafts. But so humans are taking on the desires of the space aliens because they're of the same mind. They've been developed by the space aliens, and the next level has allowed them to do it. So they become like fertilizer. Because then the ones that begin to see all these things and follow with it and see it completely verifying itself over and over again, that shows ultimately that this human kingdom is hell. It is where the space aliens are in jail. And you can hear Tiendo talk about that a little in the audio tapes 25, 26, and 27, when we were in Black Hawk, Colorado, up at 9,000 feet, and Tiendo got new chunk of information. You can hear them talk about it on those tapes, and those tapes, I think, are available somewhere. I can't provide them because I'm being sued for providing them in the past. But they are available for those that look around for them, and you shouldn't have to pay anything. Even though I've seen examples of somebody that was selling, the digitized audio tapes, some of them. Anyway, so put your feeler out if you want to get a hold of those tapes, and even ask Tiendo if you have a mind to, where you can find the tapes. So they said that these three objects, let me repeat a little bit for those that just probably joined me, that the report from the Alice Observer was that, first the overview is that they're not telling the general public these things, like for it to be on the news every day, because that's what it would take. It'd have to be a continuous story of all the things that they discovered in those months when Atlas, after its discovery, very soon after its discovery, it was doing things very unusual, like deaccelerating methodically and putting out precision encoding in an empty band that they didn't think was used by anything. Because the different bands of radio communications, and that gives even validation to what I've been saying for years, that the next level communicates with the brains of humans through a radio wave band that they haven't told humans about how to use. So I'm not saying it's the same band that they're talking about here, because I still don't think they want humans and to have that ability, and that the space aliens, those souls, have that ability, but those souls have to work through human equivalent vehicles. And so the vehicles that they first had aren't may have been capable of that radio transmission band of thought to thought, the way we see evidenced by some of the stories of interfaces with contactees and things, that humans can hear their thoughts. So they know what frequency to transmit on, and their vehicles that were first grown for them by the next level are equipped with that. And who knows if vehicles on a different planet that doesn't have the lower forces to abuse things and use things and manipulate everybody, even though they don't think they're doing that, or they think they have a good reason for it. Anyway, that's another subject. They may be able to communicate through that radio wave band with each other telepathically. So the people that are saying that, we should be able to do that, may be true. Maybe one time the vehicles that were shown to be in the book of Genesis, if that's, I think some of that is an accurate overview of records of the beginning of this current civilization of some 6,000 years. But anyway, so like it says after they created the animals, it said creating male and female after our kind. So like some degree like them. And that would have to do with the shape and the way they have the capacity to think outside the box, even. And even recognize that there are creators of all this, and they didn't build their human kingdom with systems that weren't working. Although the systems for communication telepathically need to be cultivated, and there's a lot of interference in this environment that diminishes that and makes it into something that, and also with the chemistry, the biology, and the destruction of the food supply, the brains lose the capacity for intuition. And the accepting of the lower forces ideas then implants people with mistruth. Things that aren't true, things that are not real, because they're conjured up and they're a facsimile, a copy. They're trying to copy the next level. And they don't have the facility to do it because they only have the amount of growth in their soul bodies that they had when they broke away from the next level. And breaking away from the next level is not easy. Unless somebody's been harboring something that they don't necessarily even know they're harboring. But one of the characteristics that is being worked on now is knowing that we can't trust ourselves. Our own descriptions and judgments are not to be trusted relative to the next level's judgment. Now, we can judge behavior. We know when somebody is doing something that is harmful to somebody else in mind or body, I think. Although, we see the governments doing things that harm people's mind, and the religions doing things that harm people's minds and bodies, both of them. And we see the New Age religious also doing the same thing, with their secret societies and their space alien gurus and, and their, like, I'm not saying those are bad people or demons or anything like that, but if they're putting out thoughts and ideas that would act so that there's nothing more to discover because we got it all, like the Year of Gods movement, that we're all gods, and the only reason why anybody doesn't see that, and it is because they're not willing to admit it, because they've been beaten down so much from thinking that they really were, and that humans can't do anything, and even Christians talk about this, that humans the next level, God, the kingdom of God, needs human hands to do their work. And when T and Doe, I think Doe especially, saw that on a poster, like on a bumper sticker, like said, like, Jesus only has your hands to do his work, or something like that, he thought that was ridiculous. It's like an animal saying to the humans that they can only drive one kind of car, or that's maybe not a good example, but it may be. They don't have the perspective of what humans are allowed to do and what they can do. I don't know if they can even see an airplane, if their eyes can register it, because of not having a framework for it, where they can learn to recognize cars and even be comfortable in them, as many dogs are. And cats sometimes have a harder time with that, I understand. And I've experienced to some degree with Kathy's cat. But, so they were saying that the methodical, the precision encoding that was coming from Atlas on an empty band of the radio spectrum, they said was disrupting, they felt it was disrupting Earth's stability systems, like with shifts in climate on the Earth, also affecting the migration patterns of animals. And I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that the next level would be doing that, especially at this time. So they're acting as if they're aware that this is the next level, and at the same time they're talking about how there's three groups of opinions on what to do about it. One is to try to communicate with them. And the other one is to send out probes to look for ways of mounting a defense against them. And another way was like having a negotiation. I guess that's part of communication. What was the other way, though? I'm forgetting what it was. But I mean, part of it, they're wondering, some of them are wondering if, now see, this isn't new. That's why, but see, if somebody hasn't followed these ideas of the possibility of, well, in this case with the next level, true extraterrestrial, because they're not restricted to any one location, whether it's a planet or it's a spacecraft or it's a planet inside of a spacecraft planet, however they design the different bodies to operate. So, that's, they don't know whether it's that or it's a civilization that just doesn't want humans to bring their nuclear war. I already talked about this, but I'm in that's part of my notes again. So maybe the Atlas might be a probe to evaluate humanity, but it's continuing to communicate. I'm going to go to my second point here. Which talks about that 3 weeks ago, 3i Atlas sent NASA, and this was actually broadcast on the 13th of April, so that puts it into 21 days, March 22nd approximately, which there was other things that happened during that time as well, especially around the March time when it was the anniversary of the departure of Doe and the crew, in addition to T's leaving some 12 years before that. Anyway, just so happens to be 12 years before that, approximately, within a month or two. Anyway, but so what Atlas did in that around the March 22nd time period, which I want to write that down. That it sent NASA coordinates. I think they talked about this before, and they talked about it in a different way. So to me, it was like, wow, okay, they're not like just playing a party line of some sort. They said it was a part of the wave signal that even sent a seismic map of some sort. That JPL called, I think, Michio Kaku to report the way that he told it. If maybe I'm not pronouncing his name correctly. I'm sorry about that. But he said that the signal that was sent was decoded, and that they were coordinates too deep inside the Earth's crust, like 2,800 kilometers inside the Earth's crust. And they thought it was an error at first. And they said that the Earth's interior is not uniform. And he said this was different. It wasn't to a geological feature. It wasn't to a void or a space. And then there was the second transmission 72 hours later, which appeared to be a schematic of a map of tunnels from surface to mantle. And converged at exact coordinates it had transmitted, and made a geometric pattern that was so precise mathematics that it couldn't be natural. And that the seismic analysis showed that there were massive structures inside the Earth. That they can see tectonic plates that sank long ago. But now this communication on this band that they didn't think anything was communicating on, they thought at first that it was noise. but then they weren't so sure. And they feel like there was a earthquake in Peru, a 7.1 quake in Peru, and that some of those seismic waves went through the coordinates that Atlas was transmitting. And those seismic waves were absorbed by that point inside the Earth. If it was nothing there, it would have kept on going, the seismic waves. He was saying he didn't think that they were the ancient aliens. And maybe that's true, because maybe the ancient aliens are the previous civilization of ones that went against the next level and got to be members until the next level decided to have a program so that all of those individuals that still had their self intact. I know that sounds like horrible, that they're going to take away your self. You're not really taking away yourself. Not at all. You're actually focusing yourself on being a crew member in a magnificent system that is beyond your wildest dreams to be a part of for an eternity. So why wouldn't the creators of this magic place we call Earth and the life forms on it that humans didn't have anything to do with creating? Because it's not just about the biological containers that are on this planet. You could say that the space aliens, seeded the Earth, and if that story wasn't accurate at all, that there was a flood after that, and so all those vehicles were destroyed. If that wasn't accurate, then we'd all be the descendants of those space aliens. But if that was accurate and they got rid of them, that genetic strain, and that Noah and his family had some of the strain from Adam, they were just doing a reboot to start over again because of how fast it went downhill to where they thought they were gods, and they were spawning people that had great stature and could basically take over humans and use them any way they wanted to, because they just had that perspective, and they had the technology of spacecrafts and whatever technology they had in their original vehicles, like to appear and disappear, and different ways that they could wow humans, lure them into, by their power, the force of their minds that had grown to some degree, and that somebody accumulates when they're in the presence of other members of the next level, and especially older members on their physical spacecrafts. Even though their spacecrafts that they had were like scout kind of spacecrafts. And they were more primitive spacecrafts because they had to deal closer with the primitive environment of humans, because it's a decaying atmosphere. So you don't want to have a sophisticated physical body that would be degraded. It'd be like, putting a very fragile structure in an ice storm. I'm just using that as an example. Let's say it was a crystalline kind of structure that isn't affected by the wind and who knows what else, because it just goes through them, while they're still completely physical, to where you could touch them and you could feel something if a human touched them. But the way that the light was working, you'd be either seeing around them or seeing through them. I don't know which the case might be, or if there's another part of the dimension that, curves the light around them so that you can see what's behind them. I don't know, I guess I said that a couple different ways, but so I went down that rabbit hole a little bit, if you want to call it that. It's not really a rabbit hole, it's more like I wouldn't even call it a wormhole, because it has no association with the worms. That's, that's human kingdom, animal kingdom terminology. Ouch! I either got bit by something or I got another splinter. Oh, look at that. I got a splinter, but I got it out. It's amazing. How sharp those little things are. I don't even know where that came from. But they began to think about this object that Atlas and two other objects formed a triangle to then point at and transmit the coordinates to NASA of inside the Earth was a hiding place for Atlas. That or a coworker or whatever. They didn't say that, but in a sense, a lab. There could be a lab in the middle of this planet that's actually in charge of a lot of things that go on. There's been that talk about it with Admiral Byrd and, his experiences that were, have all the signs of having some accuracy to them, even though they might have been, inserted, they might have had, points inserted into them that were too far-fetched. But then they could have also been against the same problem, is that what they did is they shut him up, Admiral Byrd. And I think he was kind of broken by it, the experience. But anyway, that shows signs that there was, accuracy to some of his story of, being inside and having two spacecrafts come and take his plane and land it safely and he had somebody else on the plane with him, I believe, that I guess didn't have any memory of what happened, if I remember correctly. And he was taken to inside of a structure of some sort, and there was a sun there. There was like, there were these two spacecrafts that ushered him into this like palace location or a high, nice facility of some sort, and where he met this being that communicated with him something, I forgot what now. I don't think it was necessarily next level, but it might have been where one of the many or all of the space alien souls go to, they might each have their own little area inside the Earth that they've built, and even over a number of civilizations, this could have been happening. And building tunnels everywhere. And so humans, what are humans doing? They're building tunnels everywhere. Because they want to escape. Because they have it in, like Doe said in the USA Today, they have rumors among them. Because they have hybrid vehicles. They don't have the same mind access to their vehicles that they had unless they actually teach those new vehicles as they're growing everything they know. If they do that, then those people would have it, but they would have a certain version of it, right? That we know how the victors in anything write the history books, mostly. And so you're going to get only the version of their version. And they're not going to make themselves look like they were the fallen angels, or they're going to make it look like they were the fallen angels because these other group of space race people were off track and were too demanding and too overlording over people, and they would destroy the Earth and humans when they were done with their project, which is true. And so we can think that they can't possibly be good if they do that. If they permit an earthquake to happen, or even stimulate an earthquake to happen, and 1,000 people lose their lives, does that mean that they're evil because they created systems that can produce earthquakes? Or do they also, within the systems, give people the ability to recognize that there might be places on the earth not to cohabitate in because of repeated earthquake behavior? And that if you are in those places, have an escape plan. So the next level does the same thing with hurricanes. They send you hurricanes that you can see from far away. And earthquakes, you can see by the animals, the way they act. You can see, humans have learned to recognize that. There were those earthquakes and tsunamis that happened in around 2007-8 in Sumatra and Indonesia, or maybe it was Sumatra and another area. And they did see reports of animals acting very strange, and they had earthquakes before. So they even though that quake, I think, no, I don't know where that one originated, but the one that hit Japan, that wiped out that reactor, the nuclear reactor there, that one was out at sea, I understand. And some think that it might have even been created by an object entering into the sea, which could be altogether possible. The next level could do that. Because after all, I don't know why it's so hard to recognize that just because we can think, some of us can think that we're so great and unique and everything, we're not. We're not unique. Well, we are unique in one context of being the result of that particular experiment, subject to those particular Luciferian, space alien, fallen angel souls and their hybridized bodies that they teach and take over the same way humans do. And so it should be no surprise, that the rich and famous, we've known for generations and generations from history and everything that they're all incestuous. And they're trying to, mate together for treaty's sake and stuff like that, so that, I think they've realized, from all the humans that were born with all kinds of problems, the space aliens probably told them, just don't do so much of that incestuous stuff, and go over there and conquer that one and impregnate the women there. It was the men in those days, the male vehicles in those days that were had more muscle strength, and so they could do more damage to people in days when there weren't guns and things, so that doesn't become a dominant characteristic of somebody to lord over somebody else. So they were, so they were thinking if it was an artificial structure inside the Earth, then who made it? And they said the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and humanity may be 300,000 years. But they didn't think that it was ancient aliens or pseudoscience. And maybe that intelligent life has always been here. But on the surface, but deep inside the Earth, we're shielded from solar flares, etc., perfecting hiding places. And Atlas said they know they are there. It's speculation coordinates. We can't physically reach. Atlas didn't come along alone. That they can't reach. In other words, they can only drill like 200 times the distance, the greatest distance that they've drilled. That's how far these coordinates were away from what they're able to get to in some drilling project in Russia. And then after the second transmission from Atlas, that observatories around the world began tracking other objects that were small, fast-moving in formations, not resembling other celestial bodies, that they've been here longer than we realized, not heading to Earth, but were here and were silent and thought it was glitches or patterns in data that no one knew to look for, that they were sending signals in space, not sending it blindly. It was a knock on the door. And then on November 17th, it was detected a low-frequency vibration that was not a quake tectonic. It was a rhythmic pattern and lasted for, that rhythmic part of it? The song, like in Revelation 14, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and ti is the higher octave, stimulating do to move up to his next highest octave, while his older member moves up to the older members. I don't know if the older member was moving up an octave or not. It doesn't necessarily work that way all the way up the chain. So that means that T wasn't necessarily getting anything from doing this task and restricting a big part of her mind. Oh, I shouldn't say a big part, but a part of her mind by having it associating with a human vehicle on the Earth physically. Because this is all physical. But the way that they communicate their reality is by interfacing in the same physical way that humans communicate. Otherwise, it's not going to be real. Otherwise, it would be like taking them over. That would be brainwashing being done by them against us. So instead, they taught us to wash our own brains, which matches with the whole idea of baptism. Get rid of all the thoughts that are not from the next level. If you're thinking about somebody in a negative way, hating on them, and they didn't necessarily do anything really deserving of that, then that's, that you're giving into the influence to some degree to get your beef off or whatever it is, And, so, people throw off steam with anger and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's a terrible thing, but it's not something members of the next level, well, a student member of the next level is going to try to improve upon it. Even though they might even do it because it's just fun sometimes to be, and that, sometimes you can think that the other person needs to hear it. And that can be the case. That some people aren't going to, unless someone actually expresses to them that they're upset with what they said or did, then they may think that that's perfectly good to do. Especially if the person brings descriptions of how it affects them in a negative way for somebody to talk to them. And Kathy's got, she's experienced a lot of growth streaming because of all the mostly guys that are jerks and are abusive to women, even abusive to women that have shaved heads. She doesn't have a shaved head, but she's got a closely cropped head, hair that she's had for most of her life. Not most of her life, most of her adult life. When she was still a teen, I think, she started shaving her head. And, or cutting it real short. So on November 17th, NASA detected, and other people also from China and European Space Station, Space Administration, and the group in the ALMA Observatory in Chile with the very large dish that they have down there that can pick up a lot of things. So they detected in their own ways, and other people too, the low frequency vibe that they knew wasn't a quake tectonic. Like I said before, it was a rhythmic pattern, and it lasted for 11 minutes and 43 seconds, and then it stopped. And it originated from coordinates last sent by Atlas. And that signal, so this is where I know that they're not just making things up, because they're putting too many details in there. A liar needs to keep it everybody that's intelligent and that uses lies or propaganda or whatever it is, they know they've got to be very simple about it and say as little as possible. Otherwise, they can easily be caught. So when they keep on giving us more details, it's more and more evidence that they are telling us what they found and trying to do so in a way that's somewhat responsible, even though early on they said a lot of things pretty blatantly that now they're not really talking about that way anymore. They're changing. So that's the other thing. They're changing the way they talk about these things so that they're not such an alarming thing to say. And if you've listened to my other Atlas live streams, you can see what I'm talking about, because I went through a bunch of different things that were reported that are in combination with these things, but different dates. In March, in December, January, there might have been something in February. Yeah, February, all different dates, different events. So the third component in this transmission, encoded transmission from Atlas, was a type of a schematic. And he said a sequence that our team, initially couldn't interpret, and that it wasn't mathematical or linguistic, but was a neural oscillation consistent with gamma rays that brainwave patterns associate with higher cognitive function and creativity and a moment of profound insight. The kind of brainwaves associated with enlightenment when boundaries of the self dissolve and feel connected to something larger than ourselves. And they talked about how that they said they were consistent. The signals were consistent with how they've monitored and mapped the consciousness to patterns in deep meditation and psychedelic experiences and moments of transcendent clarity reported from mystics. That if it was about awareness, not just that it was about awareness, not just about location of this transmission, where it was going to in the center of the earth. And they were saying that throughout human history, it's reported with otherworldly intelligence. They see that the brain misfires. But what if they can tune into intelligence beyond what we call intelligence, like with computers? Tune into frequencies of consciousness is the next stage of evolution. And they're right. They're right about that. And they said we've been blind to for all our existence, because that sounds like a science fiction. But the evidence is out there that when it moved past Mars, at the time, I guess that's where it was doing at that time when this was being reported. No, logged to be reported later, much later, that now in deep inside the Earth, that they've now formed a task force project that they're calling Deep Contact to understand what's down there in the middle of the Earth and to establish communication. And he said, here's the problem, that in colder Russia, the deepest they could drill was 12 kilometers. And the coordinates from Atlas, last time they got those coordinates, was 200 times deeper. Now, I don't know if somebody could actually measure that against the whole size of the Earth, that you see how close they are in those numbers, from our best understanding of it. But I don't think they would give us that like that if there wasn't some accuracy to it. But they might like to be wrong about things so that, people can't hold them to it or whatever, Can't say that they spilled something they weren't supposed to, or because they think about that. So they were thinking that if 3i Atlas signal, if it can be replicated, then maybe they could have a direct link to them. So he says he knows it sounds insane, but he has to be willing to think in ways that feel uncomfortable. I give him that. I give him a lot, actually. This is not easy to wrap your head around. I don't care who you are. Me included. It took me quite a bit to actually think that these things that they've been reporting are actually mostly in some ways true. Real. Their responses to what Atlas was doing in their measurements and everything. But they have a subject that achieved the brainwave state for 11 minutes and 43 seconds, which was the exact duration of the brainwave activity of the frequency that matched the pattern from Atlas. And that this person, she, I guess, had a feeling of being welcomed and recognized. like waking from a dream. Interesting that she made it into like a dream experience, because Tian-Do always said that our dreams are ways, among other things, that the next level can work with different individuals. And we can actually go to bed and ask and actually tell our body to remember its dreams. And ask to be awoken if any dreams start that that we don't want to have. Something that was scary or horrible, or that wouldn't be from the next level. They don't need to do that. That's happening in the human kingdom. The horror and the frightening things. Now, the space aliens can also send transmissions to us to stimulate dreams. And I think I've been the recipient of a few. But it doesn't mean that, they take me over. They just become, if it's negative, see, there is no lab for negativity in the next level. They don't have, there's nothing about them that's negative. They treat people the way that, a good owner of an animal would treat that animal. Knows that the individual doesn't know that much yet, but it knows enough to where it loves being with the master, and that is a bond. And so the next level has that kind of a bond with who knows how many human vehicles, because it's a soul-spirit bond. Spirit meaning actually mind, information, awarenesses, consciousness, perception, recognition of what somebody doesn't know, recognition of what they do know, and recognition of when somebody is trying to take away what they do know by tricking them into thinking about it in a different way that's not as real. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that direction right now. But, and this person that was going through this for 11 minutes and 43 seconds felt like that the feeling that she got was welcomed and not separate from humans, but that were part of a living, thinking planet. Right, because the planet is thought of as a living, thinking planet because in a number of ways. But that doesn't make it its own being. It doesn't make it into a member of the next level, the planet itself. I'm talking about the minerals and the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and the human kingdom and all the systems of technology that are available on it, and all the options and all the ways that the kingdom levels support each other and recycle and everything that happens here, which is huge, beyond what humans even recognize, way beyond what they recognize. In fact, some of the ones that are, associated with the space aliens so much, they're also into health, even though they might be working in the pharmaceutical industry, pushing, certain treatments on, mandating certain treatments on people. Because that's another thing they're trying to develop, and they're saying is good, even though they know there's going to be collateral damage. See, that's what the previous administration to Trump and the Trump administration before that found themselves a part of, that was stimulated by some, seems like Graham and the three groups that formed that video project, where they posted on YouTube many videos of the different, of having this global analysis of this new virus that they said was allegedly coming about, that was just so happened to be the type of virus that COVID ended up being. And I watched some of those videos. One of them was like a panel, and they were talking about how to deal with the internet's communication, which they were calling misinformation. Meanwhile, they were saying, the CDC was saying this, the World Health Organization was saying this, that humans need to do what they're told to do if they're going to live through this virus. And so humans, thought that wearing any kind of mask was a must, and being 6 feet away from somebody was a must. And the stores were drawing lines on the floor. I know that was happening where I lived in Vermont and New York. And you couldn't go into the supermarket to buy anything unless you were wearing a mask, and they would provide you with the mask. At least they were good enough to do that, right? And you had to wear it the whole time, even though people inside were, pulling it under their nose, as I was, because I wasn't getting good oxygen. I could tell that I was getting a little bit, lightheaded in a little way from not being able to breathe as well. So anyway, they were doing that as an experiment. They wanted to have the least variables in the experiment so that they could test their injection on the guinea pig public. And accept the consequences that they think they're justified to do, because they're saving the human kingdom from the space race that they think are the bad space aliens. I don't know what terminology they use for this, but it's the same idea. Because those bad space aliens in their minds might have even put it all together. They might have, taken over this planet a long time ago. And put a spacecraft in the middle of it. I mean, there's been stuff coming out about Antarctica through Linda Howe. And we used to listen to Linda Howe when I was in the class. And she became somewhat famous because of her book about the cattle mutilations and the horse mutilations. There were a few of those too. And the FBI accused, were wanting to question Tiendo at a meeting to see if they had anything to do with those mutilations, and they absolutely did not, and Tiendo went out the back door because they just didn't want to be subject to that. Not that they were doing anything wrong or against the law at all. But I don't even know if Tiendo at that point had legal ID because they knew that they had to be undercover. Because they knew that they were, in 1975, they weren't, the national news made them into very dangerous people that were kidnapping people. And even then they were talking about that they were going to lead them to suicide when there was no talk of that at all at that point. Even though we knew that joining, at least for me, I knew this, that I was giving my life to this direction. I mean, it felt like it was the same experience that I feel like I might have had before. When I say I'm talking about either through the genes or, being ancestrally connected to some degree, which many of us are, to what happened 2,000 years ago and 4,000 years ago and or 4,000 years ago and or before that. Or I just knew, certain things I came into this life seeing as common sense, but not knowing how it was common sense and why, and how much of it I was accurate about, because I didn't have in-depth thinking about it at all. I thought it made sense to me that spirits existed, discarnates, invisible creatures that are not really creatures anymore because they're the product of the vehicle. It's a consolidated product of the genes plus the environmental mind growing up in a vehicle and the choices that we made. What we are is the choice maker. We're not anything else. We get presented with all the things to respond to and make choices with. Even if we're going after them because in some shape or form we have this desire to do something, or say something, or build something, or discover something, or have fun with something, or have a career at something, or to become somebody. And becoming somebody can be to take care of somebody that's paraplegic. There's no way for a human to judge somebody else by what they've become relative to what the dominant culture says is becoming something of value. But humans judge us that way, and the space alien judge us that way too, because they haven't overcome that part of their self, their limited view of themselves. They think of themselves more highly than they are. And I know that's a fact because that was one of the things that T said about me. She said that it would keep me off the spacecraft because I was a little too pleased with myself. She told me in a little note that she scribbled on, and it was perfectly legible, but that she gave to other people as well. And then asked us to memorize it and then destroy it, I think is what we were told to do with it. And the other thing that was that I liked to be seen as something special. And I debated that with T after I left the classroom in my mind. And I remember saying to T in my mind, no, T, I don't want to appear to be something special. I want to be something special. And the thought I got back was, well, then you would want to become a member of the next level, because there aren't any humans that are special relative to the next level, except for the ones that are growing in that direction. That doesn't mean that everybody else is dung. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It's just that there's a very special characteristic that's limited in how many people are going to actually graduate at any given time into. But that doesn't mean that everybody can't graduate to their next grade in school. And one of the grades in school shows us how all the institutions and all the people in the human kingdom we look up to, whether it's a spiritual adept or whether it's a government official that brought in a certain program or conquered a certain tyrant or whatever it is. You know, rightfully so. If somebody's done something really good for you, you know, to work for them, to be in service to them, to be honoring them, that's all fine and well. But eventually, if you keep your mind open to be constantly wanting to be a sponge for the greater realities, then their karma is going to come back on them, and you're going to see all their dirty behavior, or enough of it to where you know that they're probably all engaged in it. That's why they're covering it up, like the pedophilia. Why wasn't it talked about for much? When child trafficking has been, I mean, it was even legalized with pornography, right? Being blatantly available on the internet. Using children. Luring people into, selling their bodies or, their sexuality to people. And getting rich off of it even. I'm not saying that's the worst thing that can happen. It's not necessarily the worst thing that can happen. The people that get involved with that industry, they can get their lessons like anybody else. And they can see that they've got an addiction to something that, they're going to probably have health problems with. But maybe they can do it, cleanly and all that. But what I'm saying is that the society that gets preoccupied with sexuality is going to have a harder and harder time digging out of that when they see that the requirement for the next level is to work in that direction. And so, it's not a requirement now so much. I'm just saying that not because of me, but because, if you look at the documentation, that there were two, in the away team document, there were two criteria for qualifying to be saved by the next level for a future opportunity to continue to grow and even to graduate into membership, to some degree of membership, even maybe getting some elementary tasks on a spacecraft and a new vehicle from. Nobody's out of that possibility, but they have to, they're going to be people that believe in this so strongly because they've studied it and it makes sense to them and they want to serve and they've asked for service from Tiendo and they read the material and they saw that one of the ways they could be of service was to get their information out. Look in the away team document from Deep Space Surfaces Before Departure that Junodi wrote in the Heaven's Gate book. She wrote that on Doe's behalf, and Doe was fully aware of it. And didn't have a problem with it. So, not that he would have censored something, but he would have said that, told Junodi about this or that he's not so sure that's accurate. That's a lot of times the way he would look at things. And then he would think about it with tea on his mind in his quiet time. And then he would come back and say, I thought about that and I think what you said is fine, or I thought about that and maybe you can put this word in there as well. Because that's what happened. Because I was there when we were doing that kind of very specific, very detailed editing of documents that we wrote. It had many people to actually look at and read and find ways of looking at it that might depict something that wasn't meant to be depicted. That's probably why Norodi took the job of being a technical editor in corporations like Texas Instruments and others, so that she could have that job after she joined and make significant sticks to pay our bills, at the same time function in the editing department of our generation of information in books and pamphlets and brochures and postings in USA Today and other New Age magazines like Common Ground, and all the ways that we did things, which I think depict actually the 10 thunders, because the thunder actually in the Revelation materials, really the root of that is roar, to roar. It's talking about the roar from the Lion of Judah, which is because of the strain of Jesus. I guess maybe Doe was on the same strain. Maybe Doe's vehicle was. I don't know. Originally. Applewhite. And he says that maybe they were waiting for us to evolve. And he's right. The next level is waiting for, not just waiting, like they're impatient. They're not impatient. They know some are going to grow faster than others. And some, they can, have a spurt and then they won't grow any further. And they might take steps backwards and then maybe take a step forward. And we can't measure what that looks like. If somebody, they're going through, people go through whatever they go through by their own choices and their own perceptions of what's real, most real, and what's not. And, it's perfectly understandable to have difficulty comprehending that Doe and the students were all of one mind on purpose by their own desire of many years. In the case of the ones that were there for 22 years, like when I joined, and then lesser years for the ones that joined in 94, but who benefited from the ones that joined 22 years before they, or 19 years or so before they did. Because we do benefit when other people go through the lessons, so that if you're around people that have learned a certain lesson, it does become easier to learn that lesson for yourself. Well, it can become easier. But you still have to go through the work of learning the lesson and repeatedly learning it by if you fall off the wagon, then getting back on. And so, and the other part of the task that was given was to be willing to stand for T and Doe and to describe T and Doe as believing that that people would need to study their information, whatever it takes, and believe it all. I mean, even though Doe changed things, T changed things, and it can say, well, because they changed this and they changed that, how do you know they wouldn't have changed this now or that? And it's true. They might change some things. But the core is still going to be there of what the goal is. But they know that we're working with the lower forces against us that are basically saturating this planet and the life forms on it. And even are part of the reason why some trees grow so crooked is because the whole planet's been affected by the electromagnetic polarity of minds that have become so base, to be so willing to just destroy life, take away the choices from other humans for their own benefit, while trying to get them to join up with them, like what happened with Virginia, well, I forget her last name, with Epstein and Giselle. Who they wanted her to be a breeder for them, and they would have all the rights. You say, well, isn't that like a surrogate mother? Well, yeah, I guess it is. I guess it is. That's not such a unusual request, I guess. I don't know how many people have been doing that. They were, being taken really good care of and all that. But when it's phony, and after the fact, when people really were, like Virginia was, dealing with, well, I'm just going to have a baby for them to then take over. I'm not down with that. So I have to figure out how to get out of here, get off that island. And so that's what she proceeded to do. Now, she died of mysterious causes because she had the goods. That's what got Epstein and Giselle in trouble years ago. But they didn't make it into a big story then, did they? It wasn't time. I'm not saying it couldn't have been time. It could have been time. It's not the next level. I don't think that was holding that back. No, I don't think so. I'll go to the chat and I'll just leave this question up here if anybody wants to look at it and my response to it. But let's see if there's anything happening in the chat. Let's see, Finbar, hello from the UK. And Shrank Japelson says hello. Hello to you. So I'm getting kind of tired. Okay, I see some. Shrank Japelson says, I hope you are doing well today. This is my first time watching one of your streams. I'm curious what made you come to the stream. So I'll just go through reading the question until I hear from Shrank if he wants to respond or if they want to respond. And it's a question I got on Facebook from a friend, a long-term friend there. And he said, hey Sawyer, classroom question. So I was listening to a priest talking about exorcism and I saw that same reel. And he referenced Mark 9:29 where Jesus said, that demon must be cast out with prayer and fasting. Let me go back to Shrank. Oh, he says, I saw you on a documentary about Heaven's Gate initially and just found your perspectives interesting. Okay, thanks for that information. I'm always curious. Most people that do come to the stream is because of those documentaries that are, periodically replaying, which is, part of what I'm sure the Next Level knew was going to happen because of their choice to exit the way they did. They had a number of options, and no doubt they considered a number of options. There could have been totally different options, and it would still have been the same information coming to us, in my opinion. But, so I'm going to continue to read from this, where it says, hey, so I classroom question, that in Mark 9:29, Jesus said that the demon must be cast out with prayer and fasting, that one must take dominion over your body, and by doing so it becomes inhospitable to demons. And this person says then, this immediately made me think of the ways I know the classroom controlled their urges in all things, and also about the idea of next level minds coming into human vehicles. So my question, or maybe questions, plural, is this: was the idea of possession by demons ever discussed? And if the next level mind coming into a human vehicle is how things worked, then can more than one spirit inhabit a vehicle? The human mind is still there according to the Catholics during exorcism. And also I wonder at part of the Beyond Human tapes where Doe says that the next level are something like body snatchers. And I mean not to draw it to your specific situation, but I know that you left the classroom because of the human world. Do you still feel like you are both what next level mind? You are both that next level mind with that human mind present. Are you wholly next level or something else? Okay, so there's a bunch of questions there. So I'm going to put up here my response. The way I wrote it was, yes, demon possession is real, but that would be a certain type of creature that once was a member of the next level above human. There are many discarnates around us all. They have degrees of bad behaviors and ways as the demons have. Multiple such minds, spirits, mind and spirit being synonymous terms, and or souls can and do inhabit any one human body, vehicle at a time, at any given time. Vehicle was the term we used for bodies, because it was all about the mind conquering the vehicle and using the vehicle like a suit of clothes, which is what happens in the next level. When you get assigned a new suit of clothes that's grown by the next level, that has new facilities, new technological facilities in it, you have to have a mind that is strong enough to be able to make those facilities work, like changing your vibrations of the whole flesh so that humans couldn't see you if you happen to be among them for a task. That's an example. So anyways, he's saying that multiple such minds, spirits, and or souls can and do inhabit any one human body at any given time. Even many for some that have a lot of presence because of their achievements in the human kingdom. Like for instance, if you were like the president, then you might have one spirit that came to you early on in college and taught you how to speak slowly and you really pronounce your words well and take care with that. And then you can have another spirit that helps you with learning lots of vocabulary and the English language and how to order things and say things in concise sentences and another one to help you be politically correct, to have some idea in your mind of That can be interpreted that way or that way, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea or the right idea, from what I'm saying. So you can have all kinds of spirits, so that if you walk into a room with all these spirits, even helping you walk a certain presidential way, and also each of those discarnates represents a type of a literal energy, a power, a force. It doesn't have to be like glaring, like a sun, or like an enlightened being of some sort, with the aura around them that shows that they've got enlightenment. They have an aura around them that people can feel, but they're not going to see. I remember a friend of mine, I never met a president or anything like that, but I knew a president of a bank, my uncle, but, and he didn't have any kind of an aura that I noticed, but I'm not that keen either, but in that regard. But some people are more keen than me, for sure. And but this friend of mine, she went to a political gathering in New York, near the city, maybe it wasn't the city limits, to meet Bill Clinton. And she told me that when she saw him, and she was right there, she ran to him to get a hug. She felt such love from him. And she wasn't like attracted to him or anything, but when she told me that story, I recognized that, yeah, people can be in awe of the humans, especially when they see them in the news all the time, and they're important, and, when they might be pedophiles, but you can be drawn to them because of the entourage of invisibles that they have that leave them also when those influences can't use them anymore. Like if the influence isn't getting what it got out of it anymore, then they leave. And you might call it like what Biden experienced, a type of Alzheimer's or something like that. If you don't use it, you lose it. That's another thing that happens. And the way you lose it is because the influence that you gathered from birth, even associated with your same family, that stuck around, tried to get the child to become presidential like you were, or something like that, in one of your incarnations. If you want to look at the spirit as incarnating, it's not the same thing, though, as what's talked about as that someone like from the next level does. They actually are taking over a soul that is its own person already, has a certain amount of next level mind grown in them, in their content of their mind, and decides to do a task to grow that soul even stronger, to become an adult in the next level and have significant service. And instead of elementary service like the Watchers had before they broke away from the next level older member, looking to that person. But so those influences lose, and they can probably be drawn back again. Like I feel like President Clinton, it seems like he drew it back again to do those interviews. Well, maybe he didn't lose it. Maybe he still had the shrewdness about him of knowing what he could say and what he shouldn't say, or not caring about some of the things that he would say, whether that was any, because they had no evidence of it, and they can always say that, oh, I'm misremembering that, because I'm old, I mean, they really can't get anything on him in that regard. He got out of it when he was, having sex in the Oval Office. But we even have influences that help our bodies walk. But Tiendo said that we don't need to overcome them, those influences. I remember when that came up. And then there's influences that help people manipulate others. Strategists. And that's in business as well. You could have influences that, they made it in big business. They know how to play those games, and use the credit system, and not pay for anything, and build their wealth, and make choices to to take advantage of people, use people, abuse people, not pay people that do the work because of getting out of it, or reducing the amount they got to pay, or and causing people to lose their companies and things. Cronyism is a real thing. I have personal experience with an individual that had personal experience with cronyism in New York City, where somebody would get the contract to build a fire station in a place that didn't make any sense compared to another spot that made a lot of sense. But it was like, I stroke your back, you stroke mine kind of attitude. And that goes on throughout government, throughout every city probably. Because the human kingdom is, in terms of being honest and good and caring about everybody equally, they don't do that. And the religious think they are associating with God, and Christians and Jews and Islam and others. I don't know about Islam so much because I just don't know much about them. But in terms of, because I know there's some good things about Islam as well. I'm not like these people that, they treat them as the demons, and they don't look at themselves in the mirror. Like when Trump said that God is good and that he doesn't like what he's doing, and the ones that were on stage with him at the time don't like what they're doing, but it needs to be done. And he said God needs to do things too. So they're thinking the same way as it sounds like the Israelis. Who are, I just saw a report from Abby, what's her name? Abby something, who went to Israel recently, and I got to save that. Abby Martin, I think is her name. That has all kinds of footage of talking to people in the streets of Israel, and there was only one in about a dozen that she focused on. That no, that was another subject. There was none that seemed to care about the Palestinians, and many of them wanted them to all be wiped out. And yet I know there's a violent protest movement in Israel against what they're doing. But I guess she just wasn't talking to them. And maybe they're the minority. It appears that they are. So we're talking about the same mindset. That's kind of a New York state of mind. But many of the Jews in New York, the people that are the Jewish faith, I'm not looking down on people in the Jewish faith. They can. We don't know what each person thinks, and what relationship they may have with the older members in the next level, what they're up against in their genes and everything. So, we just don't need to take that position. But though it did feel like that was the seat of the Antichrist that was talked about in the scriptures existing, was when they became a state they're taking their position among nations. And they're anti-Jesus. So they're anti-Christ. And yet the ones that are in office now in the United States especially in the higher offices, are T and Doe felt, and I realized this for the first time about a couple months ago, are the descendants of the ones that went against Jesus 2,000 years ago. Because they've now advanced in the commercializing of the Jesus teachings. Commercializing meaning it elevates their stature to be Christians. And they think that Jesus did it for them. And they accept that as a reality. And even if they don't, they feel like it works to capture the minds of people. And a lot of times they don't really believe any of that stuff. And they just say it because they know a bunch of their constituents do. That's normal for the politicians in high places like that. Because they have to raise funds among people that have money. So if you get caught talking against what you know their wishes are, then you're going to lose that money, and others that are of that same ilk are not going to give you money, and you just won't become president. Because to be given the money means that they think you're going to play ball with them. And I don't know if Trump was thinking that he needed to say that he was going to end the foreign wars in order to garner the people from the independents. 40% of the voting public are independents. He wanted to get that vote more than he did the last time. And then the others that were dissatisfied with the Biden and Clinton, with all their fiascos, and Obama with his fiascos, even though the last time I voted was for Obama, actually, I think for the first term. I asked T and Doe about that, who to vote for, and I had a dream, a tiny time after that, after I asked that, and the dream was of Destody, who was in a black male vehicle. And I knew him, personally, and I was partners with him sometimes, and worked with him quite a bit. He came to me in a dream, and all he said was Obama. And so I thought, okay, I'll vote for Obama. And then before that, I voted for the Green Party and, Ralph Nader. And then after that, I voted for nobody. Not somebody named Nobody, because there's a movie called A Man Called Nobody. My Name is Nobody, something like that. And it's a really good movie that T and Doe gave to us to watch. Not because it's, that good, but it was good. It was good. It had all kinds of little lessons in it, I think. Definitely worth watching. My Name is Nobody. It's with Clarence, I think is the name of the actor that plays one of the characters. And Henry Fonda, I think, was the other person that was in that. But so these discarnates can also be great helpers, like to play a piano well, as they want to feel what it felt like to be human when they were in a human vehicle. They're like a program that's floating around out there to do everything and think everything and say everything that they got off on when they were in a human vehicle. And that could mean, like, if they were killed from a murder, that they would then even be haunting that murderer. Or who knows what happens in that case. But that might be one of the bigger reasons for much of the PTSD from people that are in the service that are exiting their vehicles by their own hands. Which you can understand, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying I don't promote it, because I think all things can be benefited from. But anyway, so but then there are some discarnates that have been programmed to ignore and or hate the next level above human, which is their right to do. But it becomes problematic to the next level above human members when we might influence others to go against their current representatives, which I believe are T and Do. But that just means that the next level above human will pull away from those individuals, some, and they could go down a darker path if they don't seek their mind again. That's like selling yourself to the devil. You go down a dark path in order to get something you want. Whether that's talking about somebody against what they did, and portraying them as evil, or whatever it is. But it's in that way that individual souls, people, judge themselves whether to become waste or not. So the next level doesn't have to necessarily decide that. They do, in the final decision, they decide whether they're going to save that soul for a future opportunity and to be stored in a bucket. It's not a glamorous way of looking at it, but it's a clean bucket, if that's the way whatever holding area they have for souls and spirits, when they decide to pull up the vehicles. So yes, the mind, also spirit of each human is still there. Even when there's a space alien. But it chooses to receive the influence of these discarnates and or space alien demon souls, or not. I mean, if you have somebody telling you to get rid of yourself, your vehicle, that's not a next level. Next level would never tell anybody to do that. Never, ever, 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 ever. They didn't tell any of those students to do that. In fact, you can hear a tape that talks about doing it, and then you can hear a tape after that that says that there's no guilt in not doing it. That and Doe was honest in both cases. It's hard to be honest in both cases. But the kind of mind that Doe was, he did the hard things. He did a lot of the hard things. T is the one that told us to make our commitment to Doe. And that was talked about for a month. And we were practicing it by writing notes to Doe. And T wasn't reading those notes. Well, I don't know if she was, because I wasn't in the note. Nobody was reading those notes but them. Though they had the right to let somebody else read them. And if we didn't like that, well then I guess we could tell T and O that we didn't like what they were doing in that regard. And they would say then, well, maybe you don't want to be in the classroom. Because it didn't matter what the rebellion was against. If it was rebellion from their program, they just didn't want to spend the time on you. They spent a lot of time on each student, thinking about them at night and talking with their older member about them and how they can help them grow faster and get rid of their humanness and come into. It's not just getting rid of human behaviors and ways, it's getting rid of the desire for them and getting rid of degrees of not giving in to them so that you're actually blocking those thoughts out before they even form in your head. You can even see them and even smell them coming. And yes, so it was a very, very, very stringent program, but we had fun. It wasn't like T and Do were not terrible people in any regard. They were beautiful people in all forms. And I got corrected by T a number of times. But I never thought badly of her for that. I knew she was right. And then I proved that I was right after I left the classroom. I proved that she was right, even though I bucked it at first, which I began to talk about early in this live stream. So I'm saying, yes, the mind of each human is still there, but it chooses to receive the influence of these discarnates and sometimes take a back seat, and sometimes become the same mind as these discarnates. And that can be helpers or not. They're helpers in one vein, but they can be inhibitors in another vein, another grade in school. I'm getting kind of tired, so I don't know if I can do justice to describing why I'm saying that. So for each of us, it becomes a percentage like them or like the next level members, that we gain a percentage of being like them. For example, when we conquer an addiction, we are taking over the vehicle in that way. And that's part of a degree of evolving to be someone who the next level might take notice of and give a deposit to. When they show curiosity towards their reality, though would have to abort mostly the religio-spiritual mindsets to see more of their reality and abort the space alien minds who have only a highly distorted mind. Now, because, gosh, this is all, I need to go through this and make this into more digestible sentences. So I'm not going to even go through that any further. So the space alien minds who have a highly distorted mind now because of what they accepted and denied relative to the next level older members, they have in their history, they followed to some degree enough to get positions on spacecrafts and next level labs. Well, like I said before, it's that New Age idea of I am movement to include Christ consciousness and universal mind ideas that are part of the space aliens. Demon mind, I'm calling it demon mind. The illusion of enlightenment, though they can see more, it's only about self and lacks much quest for future discovery. The next level doesn't need sorcery, doesn't need people to have potions I'm not saying that all potions are bad, they're not. But if you're doing like kinds of voodoo and stuff, to do bad things to people, that's bad. But if you're trying to, give people help, that's not bad. As long as it's not help to be in your own limited mindset. Or if you are doing that, let it be known that that's your opinion. And you might be wrong. So not to mislead somebody into a direction that they may not need to go. Because we all need to go in a number of directions to be faced with the challenges that the human vehicles that we are trying to take over dish us out. And sometimes those get dished out in a time release fashion, along with our genes. Certain genes start going off. And you might think, what have I done with my life? And they call it, what do they call it? Some kind of a breakdown of priorities and things, or what we feel good about and all that. And so we can be willing to try something new. And some people, they do it by traveling the world or something if they got the money for it and all that. To kind of capture, and they can be captured by that. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying you're going to be captured by it like it's something terrible to do if you have the facility to travel the world. I know Kathy wants to travel the world, and if we had the facility to do it, I would go together with her. If I didn't have to, deliver food and passengers all over the city in order to just pay for our food and lodging and transportation. The religious get stuck because they get satisfied with thinking that they found it. They found the ultimate path, and they would even be tardy or detrimental or becoming a heretic to question that they have found that path, and that path means to act thus and so the way they are acting, instead of re-examining everything they do in light of what they think that savior or that religious leader would want them to do in this circumstance. That could pertain to the Buddha and pertain to people that are the forerunners of, not the forerunners, but the leaders in the Islamic communities, or the Jewish communities, or the Hindu communities, or because all those religions become killers of souls, because when the real thing comes, the real older members from the kingdom that created this planet and the life forms on it, then they tell you how to get off of it, and it means getting rid of all your humanness. Even though when they're not present on the planet, it's a different lesson ground. Leaving all behind isn't required when there's nobody to follow. And there's nobody to follow now. I'm not somebody to follow. I'm somebody that you might be able to learn some things from because of my experience. I hope so. That's why I've been doing these streams. And I'd like to know when I get off track. And I do get off track, and I think I correct it. I'm not trying to be the example in order for people to believe in me. So the religions is some of the pathways that Tian Do referred to as getting to the top of the human mountain. as with other paths, and can't get off when there is another kingdom level. So atheism is like a path in a sense, and career, building up your career can be like a path, and having a family, raising a family can be a path, and getting out of the paths can look like homelessness, and that's not a bad thing. That's getting out of the human kingdom, which you can get out of a number of things in one grade in school to where you're ready to graduate, meaning that you're ready to work for T&O, and so you'd be talking to them now or whenever you come to that. Not to ask them for stuff like a lot of the religious do, but to ask them for service. To do what they want us to do, not what we want to do. Because we would want to do, if we connect with them on a deep enough level, we will want to serve even though our vehicles are going to buck. But then, the task would be to, get the vehicle not to buck while you do the task of getting their information out and being willing to stand for T&O as being from the kingdom that created this planet and the life forms on it, and maintaining that stand and accepting the consequences of that stand, of taking that stand, which aren't going to be positive in terms of humanness. Doesn't mean that they're going to put you in a guillotine or anything like that. You might just get, negative thoughts sent to you, and you can learn to field them or block them or ignore them or set people straight because of things they say. So I answered this last question, and I'm going to close the stream after I go to the chat. And I'm saying that I'm not wholly next level. I don't feel like I'm a next level member. I'm definitely not. Whether the soul that was interfacing with this vehicle is still very closely interfacing or not, I don't know. It may only be when I do these streams that happens. I don't know. So it doesn't matter to me. I just know that that I've got some lessons to learn before I'm going to qualify to become a member of the next level. And I'm saying here that I lost some of the consciousness I gained from being the recipient of their mind, but not so much that I went against them, so that they helped me reawaken enough to still serve and grow. The next level doesn't give up on us, though we can test that. We give up on them if that's the way we choose to go, which can slip in, and if it does, that's our prerogative. And they even continued to help Lucifer, as I understand it, or love Lucifer. And to me, love Lucifer means that they would want him to take steps of recovery, if that's possible. Okay, I'm caught up with what I did in my last stream. So let me go to the chat. Joseph Coates, hello. Did you see how the Trump X account posted a picture of Trump depicted as Jesus? Well, Kathy told me about it, but I didn't see it yet. But yeah, that's he is more of the phony Jesus, that many Christians are actually following. They don't even necessarily know it. Actor Michael Merchant, hello. I'm doing okay. I hope you're doing well. And midlife crisis, right. So that was a long time ago that you responded to me to give me the words that I was missing. And then you Jazz says, what did Doe say about UFO cover-ups? Thought I heard one of the class members say it's one of the most covered up subjects on Earth. Right. That there is a big cover-up that the government's been doing. And there's also a cover-up that the next level does. Not showing humans certain things that humans would use against us until it's unavoidable. Like Doe was concerned that when we were going to do a public meeting where we were going to display Alodi's paintings of the meeting script illustrations for the movie that Doe had a crew work on and present to Stanley Kubrick, I think. Or maybe it was Gary Kirsch. I don't know. I think it was Kubrick had a relationship with Kirsch. Somehow they got to Kubrick, but they never received any indication that they wanted to do anything with it. But but Doe didn't know if somebody in a dropout would see Dan Sodi or Alodi and recognize them and then have a way to get to them. And even like, because investigators were looking for some of the class members during those years. And so Doe didn't want us to have somebody, taken against their will. We were all adults. And so that wasn't going to happen if they could avoid it. And it didn't happen because they were so good at staying hidden. And also they could find T and Doe and they could accuse them of something that could cause them to be arrested. And that would really put a damper on the classroom, because the classroom was really based on the teachers being hands-on with the students, day in and day out, in one way or another, with notes and telephone calls and in-person meetings and in-person, talking with them, one or them or both. And Stroke Japelson says, have you been playing any music lately? Yes, I've been restoring my skills. So maybe I'm going to end the stream by playing a little. I still got a ways to go. I don't know if I've caught up yet. mistakes. So I guess I can't, box it. I can play some of this. Whoops, there I go. I played it earlier. This is only the second time I played in the last 3 years, maybe. That's my own something, style kind of that I play when I do my street shows or any kind of show. I just, pick it up and hopefully I don't make a squeak. But if I do, what the heck? I'm not being paid anything for it. So let's see. Strunk Japelson says, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you enjoying it to some degree. So, folks, I encourage you to look at the other streams if you want to learn more about Atlas, if you haven't really dug in and investigated it. But 3i Atlas, I feel, is the next level. T and O are at the helm of what 3i Atlas is doing. Regardless of what it is, they're at the helm of it on spacecrafts, because they're real. They're not like floating on clouds in spirit forms. They don't do that. They have no desire to do that. They have tasks they're doing on spacecrafts that can be as big as a planet. That can have a planet inside of it that's like a replica, the way that the meeting script described Pluto. I'd like to make that movie. But I got no money. Right, so good night, folks. It's been a pleasure.